Hello again, and welcome to another edition of the Small Caps podcast. I'm Peter Capsanis. Well, there's been some pretty good news for mining and resources sectors, depending on the commodity that is, with the ASX recording new highs for iron ore, and there's some pretty good healthy spikes for gold as well. And with a pandemic in the middle, what does it mean for ASX-listed company Tesoro Resources, which is continuing its gold journey in Chile? To tell us more, I'm joined by Tesoro's Managing Director, Zeff Reeves. Zeff, good to speak to you again.
Yeah, hi Peter. It's good to be back talking with you.
Now, look, let's just recap if we can. Firstly, your focus on the El Zorro project in Chile. Acquiring deposits and focusing in Chile has been the mantra of the company since the get-go, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's right, Peter. It has, and I suppose that's off the back of I've got a long history in Chile. I've been working in Chile for over 10 years now, and the original founders of Tesoro are myself and a gentleman in Chile, Sergio Uribe, and Jeff McNamara, who's based in Singapore and a non-exec director of Tesoro. Sergio is our general manager in Chile. So Sergio and I had done numerous things over the years in Chile, and I think we looked at different regions of Chile and certainly saw opportunity there, particularly in the coastal belt, which is where El Zorro sits, where there's opportunity for significant district scale mineralizing systems and good access to infrastructure all year round, exploration opportunities and so on. So we're not up in the high Andes, but close to the coast, close to roads, power, water, towns, population centres and so on. And the project El Zorro is in region 3 of Chile, which is dominated by the mining industry. It's predominantly copper mining in that part of the world. And we came across El Zorro, and our focus has been on that project, which has been advancing quite rapidly.
Talk to me about some of the recent drilling results at El Zorro. How good have they been, and what do they mean for the future?
Yeah, I suppose the surprising thing about the drilling results out of El Zorro is just the consistency that we've been able to achieve. I mean, our technical team on the ground in Chile has done a fantastic job in unravelling the geology and building that exploration model and plan. I think to date, we've probably drilled just a little over 45,000 metres into the deposit now. Every single hole has hit some sort of mineralisation, and nearly all of them, I think around 97% of those holes have hit, arguably mineable widths of gold mineralisation. So what started off as a gold occurrence at surface with a few very old historical drill holes in is now an emerging major gold deposit. It's probably arguably the biggest gold discovery in Chile for quite some time. We're seeing a good consistent widths and grades of gold mineralisation come out of the Ternera deposit, where the focus has been to drill that out. And so we're full scale into resource definition drilling there now, with an aim to publish a maiden resource estimate by the middle of the year sometime. So probably, during June, July, somewhere like that, where we'd like to get a maiden resource out, which we'd see as a starting point for, potentially a future mine at El Zorro.
Okay, and just paint me a picture. How big, how far and wide is the project? What kind of a distance of an area does it cover?
Yeah, look, we've drilled Ternera now on over 1 kilometre of strike, down to over 400 metres deep. In parts, it's over 500 metres wide. The mineralisation sits predominantly in an intrusive suite of rocks that have been hit by faults that have introduced the gold-bearing fluids. But outside of Ternera, I think that's the real exciting blue sky bit for us as well. We know at Ternera we've got a gold deposit there. It's just a matter of how big that's going to be. We haven't found the edges of it yet. But there's another 5 targets outside of Ternera that we haven't yet drill tested. There's 2 that we have, Drone Hill and Buzzard, both recorded some fairly impressive numbers for first holes into new targets. But so far, we've defined the entire El Zorro gold system over about 5 or 6 kilometres of strike, a few kilometres wide, where we see the right intrusive rocks with the right structures, they're generally well mineralised. And we're seeing that in outcrop at surface. So we've had some quite good success with that exploration model. Is working really well. So really the focus for us now is to get Ternera drilled out, test a few of our other targets in the coming months and continue to grow the project.
You've released, on the back of those healthy, impressive assay results a few weeks back, you've released a summary or a spruiking sheet, as I like to call it, for investors and whatnot, highlighting and identifying the pros and the advantages for mining in Chile. What's a competitive advantage for miners, Australian miners, in terms of costs, honing in on Chile? From your perspective, what are the pros, and why is it better to focus and hone in on South America as opposed to Australia?
Yeah, I suppose it's an important thing to note is Chile's a little different to the rest of South America, and I think sometimes it gets put in the basket with a lot of the other South American companies where there probably is a bit of jurisdictional risk there and political risk. But look, Chile's a very mature economy. Santiago's known in the financial circles as the Zurich of South America. So all the major banks and so on have headquarters in Santiago, and it's a very modern European-style city, great infrastructure. And they've got a very strong economy built off the back of mining and built off the back of agriculture. And so those two industries are driven by foreign investment. So Chile was one of the first countries in the world to have a completely free and open trade system with other countries. So no tariffs or subsidies or anything like that. So it puts it in quite a attractive taxation regime. And it's also the world's largest copper producer. So it's got a really good, strong skill set in country for finding, building, operating mines. So, you know, as a comparison to Australia, look on exploration costs, certainly the exploration costs are substantially lower. I mean, we're drilling diamond core in Chile, all in cost is around 170 Aussie dollars a metre per HQ drill core. If you're doing that in Australia, it's probably upwards of $500 a metre, I would say, all in cost. In terms of capital costs, there is a cost saving there simply because of the lower costs of labour. But again, with the same level of engineering skill and quality that you would see in Australia. So it really is an attractive place to operate. And obviously our Zorro, located where it is, gets to leverage off all of what Chile has to offer in terms of that infrastructure and its location. It's close to a major mining city called Copiapó, which I suppose is like a Kalgoorlie on steroids. With all the major mining houses that are operating in Chile, you've got headquarters there, mining contractors, drilling contractors, assay labs, and so on, and obviously a very well-skilled workforce. So, you know, when comparing Chile to Australia, I would, you know, I tend to think that Chile's probably easier to operate in. It's got a very linear pathway to get something permitted, although it does take some time. But, you know, in the region that we operate in, we see mines getting permitted to operate regularly, and we have a fairly, you know, linear pathway to get that done once we've defined the deposit and the project.
So you believe that the regulatory powers, the legislative process is more amenable, more conducive for miners, Australian miners, compared to the system set up here in Australia?
Yeah, I think the pathway is, you know, well mapped out and well understood. It is a Spanish-based law, so it does take a little bit longer to navigate through, but there's no changes that are, you know, that come to us on changes of government, for example. And it's probably important to note that the Chilean mining laws, or the basis of the Chilean mining laws and property laws, were established in the late 1920s, early 1930s, during a democratic period in Chile's political history. Those laws are essentially remained unchanged through that democracy, then into a communist era in the 60s, then into a dictatorship through the 70s, 80s and early 90s. and back out into a democracy. And those laws have essentially remained unchanged. They've been tweaked from time to time, as they all do, as things change and there's more technology around managing concessions and things like that. But the basis of those laws haven't changed. And I suppose the evidence is in the fact that you're now seeing, and you've always been seeing, major projects get permitted in Chile. And there's probably a recent example of that is the Solaris Norte project, which is owned by Gold Fields, has just recently been permitted, and they'll be making investment decisions soon on whether they build that mine. But the other point to make is that Codelco is the world's largest copper producer. That's a Chilean state-owned entity. So that brings a lot of revenue into the country, obviously through the copper mining, and they like to operate in a very stable environment.
Well, it's a nice segue for me there in terms of copper. I understand that the Chilean lower house recently passed a bill to allow taxes to increase on copper miners. Chile accounts for about a quarter of the world's copper resource. Are you concerned that gold miners down the track might be hit with a similar taxation, a higher taxation? Do you think this is the thin edge of the wedge, perhaps? I know you've spoken about stability and that the legislation and the
I think probably to put that in context is that in regards to the copper price and the proposal to tax the copper industry, we see it as more of a political manoeuvring thing than anything. So every time the copper price goes up to significant levels, we see this type of political activity. And Chile's about to have an election this week as well. And so in terms of the political system in Chile, the lower house can actually propose any type of bill. It still doesn't make it constitutional, or it's going to get past the government. So they've ticked off on, we want to have this bill considered by the parliament and the government. The likelihood of that succeeding is probably fairly low, as, in our view, it's probably zero. And again, pointing back to the fact that Chile's a major copper producer. The biggest copper mining company in the world is Chilean-owned, government-owned, and probably the biggest chunks of foreign investment coming into Chile through the mining industry, through some of the major mining houses. So, at the moment, the regime for mining companies is to pay a corporate tax rate on profits. And I think over time, Chile's demonstrated the fact that they understand that the government in Chile understands that mining brings a lot of benefits to the economy, not just by paying tax, but also in creating jobs and creating local stability in the general economy and those sorts of things. So, we see it as unlikely that bill will get up and pass, and we certainly see it as highly unlikely that anything like that would be passed on to the gold sector. So, look, we're pretty comfortable with the way things are at the moment, and, it would just be interesting to see what the results of this election will be. And obviously, Chile's got some COVID issues to deal with. They've had, a pretty heavy second wave, but, I understand that they're quite a way ahead of Australia in terms of their vaccination rates and so on. So we're hoping that they get on top of that fairly quickly and return to normal.
Well, again, you've done my job easy for me. Segue into the next topic, that is COVID. How has COVID affected or hindered you to do your job with your team on the ground there? You were speaking off air a short time ago. You haven't travelled to Chile since the early March last year. So how crucial is it that you're there on site, or is it not? Are you happy working remotely? WFH, work from home.
Well, yeah, it's probably getting to a point now where I really would love to be in Chile and see, the results of all the hard work our team's been doing. And obviously the project's moving very rapidly, and we're starting to work on some of the aspects to do with mining and permitting and so on. So there's going to become a point in time where I will need to get in country. But we're very lucky that we've got a fantastic team in Chile, led by Sergio and our senior project Geo in Chile, and they've done a great job at not only finding plenty of gold, but also keeping our drilling programs going and all of our exploration programs going completely uninterrupted during a pandemic. So they've put in place a whole bunch of procedures and protocols and rules around how people interact and so on. And to date, they've done a fantastic job at managing that situation. So we've had no COVID cases in our workforce over the entire time since last March. And they haven't missed a beat. So we've actually increased production from drilling, and we're now have 6 drill rigs on site drilling 24/7, drilling out Ternera. So, and we've got a workforce of about 30 people managing all of that, geologists and field assistants and so on. So, COVID with the international travel has been a bit of a hindrance, but certainly from executing our programs, our team hasn't missed a beat, which has been a credit to their way that they've handled things.
Okay, so where to from here? I mean, you said you'd like to get a maiden resource update out by in a few months' time, is what I think is what you said. So once that happens, I mean, how likely, in a perfect world, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but when can we expect? When would you like some mining activity to occur if all things go well, Zeff?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward, simple, linear proposition for Tesoro, right? So, we're reasonably confident we've got a deposit on our hands at Ternera. We'll get that resource out. As I said, we're already working on scoping works, which will, sort of optimise the pathway for the project, I guess. Now we've got a lot of options at our disposal and to look at, which is a great position to be in regards to power and how you man the project and water and so on, as well as the metallurgy. So, we're in a great position there. So we'd like to get a scoping study out, in fairly short order after a maiden resource, but we'd see that initial maiden resource as just a stepping stone. It certainly won't be a closed off ore body, and we'll continue to drill through at least for the rest of this year, possibly beyond, and then move the project through to feasibility as quickly as we can once we've sort of got a resource that we think is capable of producing at a level to make that economic decision. In terms of, perfect world, getting it up and digging some more out of the ground, probably the biggest timing risk for us would be that permitting process. So we've already started a lot of that work in terms of baseline studies and so on. And it's not a risk that it won't get permitted. It's just the time that it takes to get things done due to that Spanish-based law. And I mentioned that's very prescriptive, and also just around getting baseline studies and so on done. So look, in a perfect world, gold price stays up, permits flow through unhindered, we get the mine financed, conceivably you could probably be mining in sort of 3 to 4 years' time, I guess, by the time all that was done and dusted. But, again, that completely depends on the size of the deposit, right? I mean, we could stop drilling tomorrow and probably build a mine on what we have, but I don't think that is really the end game for Tesoro or our Zorro. So we're in a fairly good position at the moment. As I said, we have options across the board to take the project forward, and I guess the real work begins now to post that maiden resource to optimise that and see where it takes us.
Zeff, before we wrap things up, what would your message be to mum and dad investors? Why should they invest their fund into a company like Tesoro with assets in South America, in Chile? I guess maybe to sort of kick off that answer, explain to us what the company's trading at the moment.
Yeah, so currently the share price is sitting at around 19-20 cents. Gives us a market cap around $100 million. Look, we're well funded. We're funded for all the work that we want to do through to a feasibility study. So we're sitting on about 17.5 million cash at the moment. So we've got a whole heap of drilling ahead of us, obviously, in that maiden resource. But look, when we look around the market at some of our peers, you know, we would think that there's plenty of value to be still to come for Tesoro going forward. You know, I think we do get a bit of a discount being across the other side of the Pacific Ocean, but I just really do need to emphasise Chile is a fantastic place to operate. You know, it is equivalent to Australia, and I would argue that it's easier to operate for a mining company in Chile than it is in Australia. So, you know, we don't have the same hindrances that we do in a very proactive government in terms of getting things up and running. So, look, exciting time ahead for the company. Maiden resource to come out, followed by those mining studies. You know, this project's de-risked geologically. We know there's plenty of gold in the ground. Well funded to drill it out and continue to grow it. We really don't know how big this resource is going to be, but it's certainly looking like, you know, as I said in the opening gambits, this is probably the biggest gold discovery in Chile for quite some time, and we're pretty excited about the pathway forward for it.
All right, Zeff. Well, it sounds really exciting, and you're gaining ground month by month, week by week, by the sounds of it. And I mean, the fact that you've got dozens of people on the ground and half a dozen drill rigs already on site, and you're looking to go deeper and dive deep into what lies beneath, so to speak. It sounds very encouraging and exciting. Zeff Reeves from Tesoro Resources, thanks for joining us on Small Caps today.
Cheers, Peter. Great to be back.